Before every game, the pills were already there. Nobody asked, nobody offered. They were just there, the way tape and water bottles are. They didn't call it addiction. They didn't call it negligence. They called it doing his job. And the league kept handing him the bottle to prove it. This is what that bottle actually cost him. Before the pills, before the lawsuits, before any of it, Nick Boynton was supposed to be one of the best defensemen of his generation. The Washington Capitals took him 9th overall in 1999. The contract talks fell apart, and he went back into the draft pool. 2 years later, the Boston Bruins took him again in the first round, 21st overall. By the time he got to the NHL, the resume read like a guarantee. Memorial Cup with the Ottawa 67s, Tournament MVP, NHL All-Rookie team in his first full season. He played in the 2004 NHL All-Star Game as a member of the Eastern Conference. He logged 30 points in 2003-04, his best year in Boston. He was a top-pairing defenseman on a real team. That's who scouts thought they were getting. That is not the player he became. He became the guy who fought. He could move the puck, he could log heavy minutes, but every team he played for wanted him for the same thing: his fists. Someone who would drop the gloves the second a star got run. Someone willing to bleed for the four guys on the ice paid to score. Here is the part most people who watched him play never knew. He hated it. Years later, he would describe what the nights before games actually felt like. Lying in a hotel room, staring at the ceiling, knowing what was coming. Listen to him say it. I absolutely hated to fight. I was scared to death of fighting. On the nights before we played, I wouldn't be able to get any rest. I'd be lying on a bed in a hotel room in Buffalo or Calgary or wherever, just kind of nervous and on edge, worried about what was going to happen to me out on the ice the next day. Nobody in the building sees this part. The fans want the fight. The coach wants the spark. The player wants to sleep, and he can't because in 14 hours, someone twice as angry is going to skate at him with the same instructions his coach just gave him. So Boynton stopped sleeping, not for one night, for years. The fear was real and constant, and there was no one in the locker room he could say it out loud to. Saying it out loud meant the next call-up from the AHL took your roster spot before the plane left the tarmac. So he stayed quiet, showed up, did what they paid him to do, and he started looking for something that would help him sleep. He did not have to look far. Stop. Before we go further, you need to see how the pills got into his hands. This wasn't a prescription. This was a supply chain. Here's the scale of it. Take one of his contemporaries. Derek Boogaard, Minnesota Wild, single season, 2008-09. Boogaard's family later filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and the lawsuit included a number that became the centerpiece of the case. In one season, team physicians, team dentists, trainers, and staff wrote him 1,021 prescriptions. In one 6-month stretch inside that season, he received at least 25 separate prescriptions from 10 different doctors. 622 pills total from a network of medical professionals, all employed by or connected to the same league. That was the system Boynton was inside. When he walked into the trainer's room before warm-ups, the pills were already there. No locked cabinets, no consultation. They were just there, the way tape and water bottles are. One before the game for nerves, another after the game for whatever you broke during it, a third for the flight home so you could sleep. His words: trainers always had painkillers, so I took them, often, and it just escalated from there. Then the system hit a problem. His body adjusted. The amount that worked in October stopped working in January. The trainers had limits. He found another way. His words again: I was taking so many painkillers and other drugs on a daily basis that I started to not even be able to recognize the person I had become. Eventually, I couldn't get as many as I wanted, and so I started buying them from people on the street. The supply chain handed him off. The dependency the trainers helped start didn't care who paid for the next bottle. While all of this was happening, his head was being hit, and his head was changing. Boynton has said he suffered at least 8 concussions in his career, and probably more. He can't give a final number because, according to him, the league lost 2 years of his medical records. 2 years of his own head injury history that no longer exists in any file. What he can describe is what those concussions felt like in real time. He was blacking out after hits. He was losing chunks of games and not remembering what had happened in them. He had insomnia that no amount of pills was fixing anymore. He had memory loss that didn't return. CTE is a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated blows to the head. It can only be diagnosed after death. But the symptom profile during life is consistent across enforcer after enforcer. Depression, insomnia, memory failure, substance abuse. A mind that stops wanting to be here. Boynton was hitting every one of those symptoms. He thought he was the problem. He thought he was the one who couldn't handle the job everyone else seemed to be handling. He was wrong. And the proof of it was sitting in a server in the league office in an email nobody outside that room was supposed to see. Now, here's the part that should have ended careers. At some point during his playing days, Boynton went to team management. He told someone with authority that he had a problem with painkillers. He asked for help. He was traded within weeks. He hasn't named the team. He doesn't have to. The sequence speaks for itself. Disclosure, then a phone call telling him to clear out his stall. He asked for help, and the help arrived as a roster move. The system that built the dependency had no mechanism for trading it. It only had a mechanism for moving it somewhere else. That is not an accident. That is a policy. And the proof that it was understood as a policy at the highest level of the sport is not in a leaked document. It's not in a court filing. It's in a sentence written by the man whose actual job title contained the words player safety. Brendan Shanahan, Senior Vice President for Player Safety. In writing, in 2011, he described exactly what Boynton had been living for years. His words, they used to take alcohol or cocaine to cope. Now they take pills. Pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to ease pain, pills to amp up, getting them online, pills to sleep. The exact thing Boynton was taking the night before games. In a hotel room in Buffalo or Calgary, staring at the ceiling, terrified of what was coming the next day. The player safety chief named the entire pipeline in writing in 2011 as casually as reading a menu. He didn't follow it with a plan. He didn't follow it with a policy change. He followed it with nothing. Because the pills were not a bug in the system. They were how the system stayed running. That is what the league built. This is what they knew they built. And when a player raised his hand and said he needed help, they traded him. So what do you call a league that built a pipeline, watched it kill people, admitted in private that it was killing people, and then spent the next 10 years telling the public none of it was real? There's a phrase for it in any other industry, knowing failure to warn. A company that learns its product is hurting people, keeps selling it, and tells the buyers it's safe is liable for what happens next. That is not a moral position. It's a legal one. And it's the position the NHL spent millions in legal fees to keep out of a courtroom. The settlement closed the courtroom. It didn't close the question. For Boynton, the question kept going long after the games ended. The things he had been managing with the pills didn't stop when the job did. The depression didn't leave when he did. Neither did the anxiety. Neither did the thoughts about ending it. He's talked about cocaine addiction after his playing career and about being afraid he would end up another name on the list with the three from 2011. He won a Stanley Cup with the Chicago Blackhawks in 2010. He was on the ice for the championship-winning goal in Game 6 against Philadelphia. Most players spend their whole career hoping to lift that trophy once. Here's what he said. They can scratch my name off that cup, and I'd hand my ring back right now if I could go back and make it so that I wouldn't have had to experience all this pain and sorrow and anger and sadness. The most valuable object a hockey player can win. The thing every kid who ever laced up skates dreams of touching, and he'd give it back tomorrow. Not for money, just to undo what the road to it did to him. He has said on the record that he cannot in good conscience let his son play hockey. Not until the people running the sport take what happened to him, to Bugard, to Belak, to Ripon, and treat it like the pattern it is, instead of a series of unrelated tragedies. The man who played 11 seasons in the NHL will not let his own child near the game that made him famous. Read that one more time. Then ask yourself what he knows that the league still won't say out loud. And ask yourself something else. The jersey on your wall, the seat at the arena, the fight you replayed 3 times last night because the hit was clean and the gloves came off fast. The chain Shanahan described does not end in a hospital. It doesn't end in a funeral. It ends in the moment you buy the ticket. The supply chain has a customer at the end, and the customer is the person watching. There's one more person who belongs in this story. Len Bugard, Derek's father, a retired RCMP officer, spent the years after his son's death doing what no one in the league office was willing to do. He pulled the prescription records, counted the pills, tracked down every doctor who wrote one. He documented the exact pipeline that killed his son. And he did it while his son was still alive, warning the New York Rangers in the fall of 2010 that Derek had relapsed. The Rangers' doctors and dentists wrote him 366 more prescriptions after that warning, after a trained investigator told them in person the patient had a documented addiction. Derek Bugard died in May 2011. 10 years later, another former NHL player, Jimmy Hayes, died of an overdose at 31. Leaving behind a wife and 2 children, Len Bugard was asked for a comment. He gave one sentence. How many players have to die before the NHL acknowledges that there's a problem? He's still waiting for an answer. So here's the question. Knowing what you know now, can you still watch the same way? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Not the safe one, the real one. If this story stayed with you, a super thanks goes a long way toward keeping work like this on the channel. And hit subscribe, there's more coming, and the next one goes somewhere you will not expect.